things first. I'm Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter, Nick Wright. I'm just going to say, I honestly love both of you.
Well,
I love you
Jenna
guys.
Wolf.
Every morning, something else happens that makes me blessed that I work here.
I'm so glad you used the word blessed. If you follow Chris Carter on Twitter, every morning he sends out a different Bible verse, a devotional. I don't know exactly what you'd call it. But I've never actually seen him get down on two knees and pray as I did 60 seconds ago. And it was inspirational on my end. It was great to see.
Yeah, it's directed at you two.
Yeah.
Well, are we okay? Do we meet your standards?
We're good.
You know,
We're good.
we
Listen, he puts up with a lot
We're
with the
good.
two of us.
Jesus, take the wheel.
But he's happy he does. You are happy, right? All right, let's start the show. It is one thing to be the best in your field, but not the best every day. And then there's another thing to be LeBron James. Lately, and by lately I mean almost every single night, he's carrying his team as the best player in the league. LeBron James out west to play the Nuggets. I'm pretty sure the Cavs were there as well. LeBron scored 39 points. He grabbed 8 boards. He had 10 assists, including a clutch basket to put the Cavs up 5 with just under 10 seconds to go. Cavs end up winning, and here is LeBron James describing how he's playing right now.
Probably at an all-time high, you know, just because of my body, my mind, the way I go out and approach the game. And then, you know, just the grace of God giving me the ability to do this. So, you know, I'm blessed, and I never take it for granted.
All right, Cece, here's a question I could have asked you today or any day over the last 15 years of NBA seasons. How impressed were you by LeBron's performance last night?
Not only his performance, but his ability to be able to play at this level. And, you know, where is he right now as a player? You can see in last night's game is there's no spot on the court absent a little bit of the free throw line that he's not comfortable. So he can go to anywhere. He can shoot from the corner. He can shoot the diagonal three. That's one of his favorite threes. The top of the key, we know that. We know what he does in the lane, his ability to be able to draw fouls, but the variance of shots that he can shoot, one-legged, bank shots, and his ability to be able to pass the ball, I understand what he's saying, because the first thing he said in the interview as far as his body. Man, when your body at this age, because I believe this is at his prime, he will never be better in this window. From, say, 29 to like 34, that's prime time real estate for any elite athlete. If you go back to athletes in track and field, if you look at the 100 meters, guys run faster when they're getting to their late 20s or early 30s. Look at guys in the NFL. Tom Brady, he's 40. But look at where he was in his late 30s or mid-30s. So I expect LeBron James to continue this, but his body, his overall conditioning, he's also gotten into sync where he knows what he needs to do. He knows the right amount of cardio. There was a point in his career, I know when I was in Miami, a season ticket holder, he struggled with cramping. So those things have been alleviated through dieting, but it's trying to find, and Jenna, you'll understand this, you do a lot of working out. But you know when you get in that sweet spot as an athlete as far as what I'm doing from a weight training standpoint, what level I'm able to maintain. And I think that's where LeBron is now. He hasn't missed a game this season.
Has not missed a game this season.
Honestly.
And that speaks to, with all the chaos that's going on in Cleveland since game number 1, man, there have been plenty of nights that you just wake up and just like, you know, I just don't got it. I'm going to take some time off. He hadn't done that. I believe he's trying to send a message. And last night was just kind of the stamp, just to let you know, this is LeBron James. This is who I am. And this is what I like. Because last night he was closer to the players that I believe offensively, like Kobe. He was closer to Jordan with better efficiency. We went to watch him at the Knicks. I was so mad at him at the Knicks game because I know he's got this. Like, I know he's got this in his arsenal. And when he decides to utilize it, which last night they needed for lack of scoring, I love it. I mean, last night you could see why LeBron James is so special, and you could see how he can do so many different things, why he's the best player in the world.
Well, and last night's game ended perfectly. LeBron hadn't scored in the fourth quarter. The Nuggets had closed it 4 separate times. The Nuggets make it a one-possession game under 2 minutes. How does LeBron respond? It's 104-102 Cavs. LeBron gets an and one bucket. Okay, it's 106-104 Cavs. LeBron hits a 3. And then
the thing about the 3, too, Jenna, is they were in the pick and roll on the diagonal. they decide to go underneath LeBron. At that time, they're only up 2 points. It's really a bad shot if you shoot the three then, or it's a dagger. They decide to go under the pick and roll. So for him to have that type of confidence in his three-pointer, that to me, it speaks also volumes, not to cut you off.
No, you're
or
fine.
anything.
And I mean, he's shooting. The reason he has that confidence is since February 1st, he's shooting 45%. Up until January 1st, he was shooting 42%. In January, he shot 20% from three. But you remove that month, this is the best three-point shooting year of his career. But those two shots that I didn't get to yet, the one-legged floater from 14 feet to put him up 5 and with 40 seconds left. And then it was as if he said, okay, I'm going to do the exact same shot, but a higher degree of difficulty with more on the line. Now there's 12 seconds left. I'm going to extend it from 14 feet to 18 feet. Land in the front row to ice the basketball game. The one knock on LeBron James that has followed him around his career erroneously and insanely is the idea that this guy is not great down the stretch, as if we didn't see him hit a jump shot to win a Game 7 of the finals, as if we didn't see him block a shot and then hit some free throws to seal a different Game 7 of the finals. But this year, nobody has been more clutch than LeBron James. No one has scored more clutch points than LeBron James. No one has taken more clutch shots than LeBron James. No one has scored more fourth-quarter points than LeBron James. And they needed every last one of them last night because we have talked about what Larry Nance is going to give you offensively, and he did it again yesterday, and what he's going to give you energy-wise defensively. Where he is going to struggle is against elite big people. Not undersized fives, but true 7-footers or close to it like Jokic is. And Jokic was giving him work in the second half that put the Nuggets back in the game.
But thank goodness that there's no championship team that has that type of player.
Exactly right.
Also, Jokic was looking for some revenge because he got benched in the game before against Dallas.
Didn't play in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so he came out and he took it out on Nance. But that is a good point as far as, yes, the pluses of Larry Nance. But when you start getting to it, this is what kept Denver in the game, and that's why LeBron had to have the heroics that he did have.
No one will doubt that when LeBron plays like this, the Cavs can beat just about anyone. I mean, he down the stretch, clutch shots, outside shots. I mean, he does it all. I guess my question would be, does he have to play like this in order for the Cavs? I mean, what are we talking about here? The East? Are we talking about going up against the Warriors? Are you talking about winning it all? Does he have to have consistent games just like this in order for this team to win?
Jenna, this is how LeBron plays in the finals. And they haven't been able to beat the Warriors. This is exactly what LeBron James, if you look at the numbers, this is what LeBron has been doing. So now, I mean, we expect to get that. Now, can LeBron, like last night against different opposition, can he do this 4 times? Because that's what he's going to have to be able to do. Like, can Kyle Korver, one of those guys, hit a shot? Which in game number three
we were at,
if he makes that shot, then
LeBron
comes back with what he did last night. This is the way LeBron has played. Golden State has been that good that it wasn't good enough.
CeCe's absolutely right. Like, what I think we saw last night was not necessarily NBA Finals LeBron, but the reason I have not been worried about the Cavs in the East at all is what we saw last night is playoff LeBron. If you saw early in the game in the first half, 22, 4, and 6 to give his team a 12-point cushion.
Yes.
And then slowly kind of tries to get other players involved, takes the foot off the gas somewhat, and says, okay, but if you need me, I'll be ready at the end. The Nuggets, because of Jokic, as we were talking about, they draw it back close, they need him, and he closes it at the end. That's playoff LeBron. In order to beat the Warriors, listen, they have beaten the Warriors. If you look at, take last year out of it, the first 2 times they met in the finals, how did the Cavs get a 2-1 lead? LeBron was the only player on his team that was really above replacement level. Everything ran through him. He was giving you 40 a night. How did they win the final 3 2 years ago? He had 41 in back-to-back games. Then he had a 29-point triple-double in the finals and played great defense, particularly at the end. In order for the Cavs to have any shot to beat the Warriors or the Rockets, what you have to get is at least 3 transcendent LeBron performances and then one other game where everyone hits shots.
The team wins the game.
Right. That's the only way to do it. He's the only player in the league that this would be plausible with. And this is the point that I want to make about LeBron. When people are, how close is Kevin Durant? Like, what is the gap between LeBron and everyone else? You switch off LeBron with any other player in this league and put them on this Cavs team this year with everything going on with them. They are not a playoff team. They are. You put Russ on there. You put Steph on there. You put KD on there. They are fighting for the 8th spot, as opposed to being a team that I think we all believe will be in the NBA Finals.
And that's the reason why he should be the most valuable player. All right, moving on to the Rockets. Spoiler alert: they're still really good. They won their 17th straight game last night. This one at the expense of the Milwaukee Bucks. James Harden had 26. Rockets improved to 34-1 now when Harden, Paul, and Clint Capella all play. I feel like they should just all play. Nick, are the Rockets the most complete team in the NBA?
Oh, they are definitely the most complete team. Now, you can argue if they're the best team or not, and I think a lot of people would still say Golden State's the best team. But as far as the most complete team, a team that doesn't have any holes, a team that can beat you in different ways at different paces with offense or defense, with bench scoring, with starter scoring, with three-point scoring, or with transition scoring, the Rockets are a team that checks every single box. The only thing they don't have is a true low-post scorer. But what great team does? Golden State doesn't have a true low-post scorer. Cleveland doesn't have a true low-post scorer. Like, nobody that matters has a true low-post scorer. Detroit's got 2 of them, and they're going to miss the damn playoffs. Like, So are they the most complete team in the NBA? They are. I mean, and on this winning streak, CC, I mean, they have beaten, not only they won 17 in a row in 22 of 23, but I mean, they have beaten Golden State, they've beaten Boston, they've beaten Oklahoma City, they've beaten Cleveland, they've beaten Minnesota 3 times. They have beaten some of the best teams in the league on their way throughout this winning streak in this last 2 months of great basketball.
This becomes very difficult, just the wording, the most complete team, because Golden State is so exceptional in certain areas that maybe they might not be as good in another area. So complete, like, does that mean the best? You know, to me, I'm still worried about the coach, D'Antoni. I'm still worried about, in a 7-game series, what adjustments he's going to make when the game changes. So from a coaching standpoint, I have more confidence in Steve Kerr. Now, there is something that the Warriors have never dealt with. That is postseason pressure. Last year with Kevin Durant, they skated through. Now, the previous 2 times they were in the playoffs, they did have a couple little hiccups, but with Durant, they've never struggled in the playoffs. So I would say the same thing for Houston. We're worried about them in the playoffs. Well, what if someone gets a 2-1 lead on Golden State? How do they respond to that with Kevin Durant? That's something that we haven't seen. But we know they have the championship pedigree. So, yes, right now we might say Houston is more complete. But in stressful situations, who is better from a coaching standpoint? I would just say right now I give the advantage to Steve Kerr. Why? Because I've seen it. And I haven't seen Houston do it. So right now, in March, complete. But, yes, but Golden State is so good. And they have 2 of the top 5 players, so they can be lack in a certain area. You could be like, 100%. Oh, their bench is a little bit older, or we don't know how Livingston's going to play. Things like that, but they are so good. They got guys at the end of the game that can take over the game, and they got 2 of those guys. Everyone else only has 1.
They have, at the end of games, they're going to have 4 Hall of Famers on the court. They're the only team in the league that can say that. Like, that's their frontline talent is overwhelming. And one thing, my eyes kind of perked up when you brought up the coaching, because when I'm checking all these boxes for Houston, the 2 things that are somewhat in the intangible category, experience in the postseason and coaching excellence. I think D'Antoni's a good coach, but I agree with you. I think Golden State's got the coaching edge. We know they have the experience edge. That wasn't really, I wasn't incorporating when I was like, you want this, you want this, you want that. I was thinking from a player's perspective. It's a really good point.
One of the next couple games that they have is going to be going up against Toronto, which will be a really good test for them to see the way Toronto's playing and the way the Rockets are playing right now. All right, speaking of Golden State, which you were, let's move on to Kevin Durant and the Warriors. Durant's having another great season, and Durant's having another year of being overlooked as a front runner for MVP. According to Durant, this doesn't bother him. See, when you're great, you either play great or you tell people that you play great while also playing great. Durant chose the latter, telling Yahoo Sports, look, I know how good I am. Everybody in this league knows how good I am. All the fans know. They know when I step on the court, they fear me as fans of the game. But obviously, the move that I made, they didn't like it. So anything to take a shot at me here and there, I knew it was coming. Or perhaps it's quotes like that that make people wonder about what your intentions are. What do you think, Nick? Is Kevin Durant right with everything he said?
He is right about everything but one part of it. One of the parts of the quote we didn't mention there was he said, I hear the crowd gasp when the ball comes to me on an open shot. It's 100% right. He's 100% right that the fans know how good he is in comparison to his contemporaries. He's 100% right the players in the league know how good he is in comparison to the other players in the league. The one thing Durant is not taking into account there, or maybe just doesn't care about, but me as a guy that loves the history of the game, I do care about, is what his move to Golden State has deprived us of figuring out is how you can actually place him in the all-time pantheon. Because he's a guy with all-time pantheon ability. He's a guy that absolutely has the skill set and theoretically the accomplishments to be considered one of the 10 greatest players ever. For his career, he gives you 27 a game on better than 49% shooting. Here's the full list of guys who have done that. Durant, LeBron, Jordan, and Wilt. Like, he is in that, he could end up in that discussion. But it's going to be so hard because everyone in that top 10 all time has on their resume a championship where we look at and say they were the unquestioned, clear-cut alpha on their team, leader who carried their team. Kobe got that with his second run of championships. Shaq got that with the first run. We can go down the list. LeBron didn't get it until 2 years ago in Cleveland. So that is the one thing that if Durant stays in Golden State with Steph for the rest of his career, that we won't get to find out. But the rest of it, what he's talking about in the here and now, I got no problem with what he said, and I think what he said's correct.
All the players in the top 10 as far as NBA ranking all time, every one of them you can poke holes in their resume. Every one of them you can poke holes in what their legacy is. But for me, before Kevin Durant went there, he didn't have no legacy. He wasn't going to be no winner. He was going to get ready to score a lot of points, a lot like Melo, score a lot of points, be a phenomenal scorer, but not a champion. And your legacy changes when you are a champion. So without the move to Golden State, we'll say, man, he might not have won a championship. So when you don't have a championship, you're already down a couple tiers of the greatest players ever. To me, you also have to judge him on the time for which he played. It's the time of the super team. Kevin Durant was a free agent. He lived out his obligation in OKC. He don't have to stay there to prove himself for a legacy standpoint. To me, it's about, man, how do I get better? And going to Golden State, it made him a better player. I could care less if he was playing with people who couldn't see out there. Being the best in the NBA, and I think that his relationship with LeBron and the things that he said, he gets a lot of validation from LeBron, who's one of his best friends. Kevin Durant is a phenomenal player. People do gasp when he gets the ball. Yes, the thing that Kevin didn't mention was, I ain't got no problem with what you do on the court. The only issue I had was the stuff that he did off the court that seemed petty. It seemed immature. It seemed not becoming of one of the greatest players ever. He left that part out. So I have no problem with him going to Golden State. Yes, you might give him criticism, but he's got to do what's best for his career. And to me, he didn't have a legacy until he went to Golden State and was able to win a championship and win the MVP in the finals.
Before we take it off court, I just want to ask you one thing, because you mentioned he wouldn't have had a legacy without winning a title. I firmly believe had he stayed in Oklahoma City, they could have won a title. I mean, they were up 3-1 on the Warriors, and it took one of the greatest performances in a playoff game ever by Klay Thompson for them to not go to the finals, a finals they would have been favored over Cleveland in. Now, I don't know if they would have beaten Cleveland, but I don't look at KD.
But now that question is answered, though. You're talking about, well, if he would have stayed there, they would have had potentially a chance. Now that variable's moved. He's a champion.
He is.
He's the MVP of the finals. Mm-hmm. So, why doesn't he have the right, like any other player, to move to another team?
No. It's not about him not having the right. And I've never said he didn't have the right. And I understand that. And part of this is selfish on my behalf.
What if he didn't believe in the organization? What if he didn't believe in Russ?
Recognize all that. And which is why, for a lot of people, myself included, all of those would have been he could have gone to 28 teams and not gotten hardly any criticism. He went to the one team he was going to be hyper-criticized for joining, or one of two. I guess if he had teamed up with LeBron, he would have been criticized as well. But the point, you mentioned you can poke holes in the resumes of the top 10 guys all time. Of course you can. Like, we can poke holes. I've poked the hole in Jordan's. You poked the hole in LeBron's. Like, we can, of course you can. But what all those guys have in common is a ring where everyone knew they were the guy. And LeBron, by the way, LeBron was not even considered in the discussion for greatest player ever until he got that 2 years ago in Cleveland. Like, that is the one thing that if KD stays there forever, that is going to make it hard for guys like me, and I know we're different on this, that like to make lists, that like to talk about who are the greatest of the greats. It's going to be hard to place him because his talent clearly puts him there.
Here's what I'm picking up on is that neither of you have an issue with what he said. I know you don't. You say it's well within any athlete's right to tell people how good they are. I would not have an issue with this if LeBron said it. For some reason, it's Kevin Durant, and it goes to everything else that has sort of been Kevin Durant's recent legacy. Like, a lot of the distracting stuff, a lot of the let me tell you how good I am because me just showing you how good I am is not enough. People gasp when I get the ball. It's what is the point of that? It's unnecessary. You're great. We know you're great. We've seen it. We've seen it on the bottom of your shoe. We've seen it on your fake Twitter accounts. We know how good you are every single night. I don't understand how that makes him look better at all. To the fan, to his teammates.
Yeah, I don't think he cares, nor do I think he should. He is a phenomenal player. He is not just, oh, man, we'll see another guy come along like this.
Right, he is a phenomenal player.
We are not going to see another 7-footer.
No.
Who can dribble the ball and score the basketball, cross people over, a rim defender.
100%.
We are not going to see that. And what about being authentic? Like, what about that's the way he feels? Like, it's his career. I just get so upset with people who love to manage other people's career because if I was that person, I would. Well, you're not that person. And that person deserves the right to be able to choose where they want to work. And when you have a microphone in their face, they have the right to say what. And I believe Kevin Durant believes that.
Jenna, I was as critical of Durant for the shoes and the fake Twitter accounts and the all of a sudden tough guy act that he was, I thought, perpetrating the first half of this year as anyone on television. I think all those things irked me. I thought he was not representing himself as a true superstar in this league, should all those things. This, to me, is just honesty. And maybe I'm a man on an island. I prefer every day of the week honest, authentic cockiness as opposed to false humbleness.
Him and LeBron did the commercial, and LeBron said, we're the best two players in the world,
Correct.
And we have been for a long time. So if LeBron can say it, KD can definitely say it.
But LeBron's not nearly as image conscious as we all talk about KD being.
I think LeBron's the most image conscious athlete in the world. I think LeBron.
But you have to admit he is too.
Listen, and KD.
And he's worried about it. How come I became the bad guy?
KD certainly does care what people are saying about him. Like I know.
Right, and
that's
I'm saying
a real
that
thing.
doesn't help.
He's human. So do you. And so do you.
Right, but I wouldn't come out and say I'm the best. I know I'm good at stuff, but I wouldn't say I'm the best.
But he is.
At it. But why do you have to tell people? We know you are. We know you're the best.
I'm going to tell you, Jenna, I don't believe anyone in the history of football caught the ball better than me. And you know the reason why I say that? Because no one else is going to say it. And the reason why? Because I really, 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 really believe it.
And did you say it while you were playing? Did you
Absolutely.
come out to it? I'm the best player. Nobody's better.
Listen, Jenna, this is just to be quick here. This is, and it's not a criticism, but this is you assigning your own sensibilities to some. Chris says that. I think one of the.
It's just my opinion. That's it. It's not me assigning. This has nothing to do with me. That's just how I feel. I bet you fans feel that way.
Of course, but
the fans are assigning their sensibilities when they do that.
Exactly right.
Because they always feel like if I was in that position, I wouldn't do that. That's what you're doing. You're assigning your sensibilities to them.
And by the way, so are
not
we.
Them.
So are we. Like one of the reasons I think Chris and I, when we met, hit it off is that the thing that he said about the way he catches the football. Man, like, I've got that in me as well. Like, I will say right now, I don't think there's a person that does this for a living that's smarter than me. They might know more things. I don't think there's a person that talks sports for a living that is smarter than I am. I believe that. I'm proud of that. And I'll say that on TV. What Chris said about his career. But you would never. You could believe all those things, and you would never say it. But that's just who you are. So one of the reasons we're assigning our sensibilities to KD, like one of the reasons we got no problem with these comments is let me tell you this. If I were Kevin Durant, If I were that rich, that famous, and that good at that type of job, man, you wouldn't be able to tell me nothing.
Moving on to the trials and tribulations of Kawhi Leonard. He's played only 9 games this year, recovering from that quad injury. He's reportedly been unhappy with the Spurs medical staff and has been rumored to want out of San Antonio. Here's something we haven't said in a while. Let's hear from Kawhi Leonard.
Everything was done as a group. I don't feel like nothing was friction. I talk to Pop every day. He knows what the progressions were. He knew what I was doing the whole entire time, as well as the front office, and we made a group decision, so it wasn't me just going out and saying I'm going to go do this.
Would you like to finish your career as a Spur?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, first of all, he was kind of putting, what is he supposed to say when you're asked that? It's not like, well, let me think about it, I'm not sure.
If people didn't hear it, the question was, are you trying to finish your career as a Spur? And he said, yeah, sure.
He sort of got caught off guard by a reporter asking the question. But anyway, CeCe, are you buying all the comments from Kawhi that the Spurs were kept up to date and kept apprised of all of his medical decisions the whole time and the rest of it?
Well, yeah, I know Kawhi. I know some of the people that are around Kawhi. So for those who don't know him, this is his personality. He's very understated, has a very soft voice. So even in this interview, like, okay, what did he say? What was the question there? Like, this is who Kawhi is. But for full disclosure, there's no way that they could have made a collective decision as a group, because teams don't allow you to go outside of their staff from a medical standpoint to get a third or fourth opinion. So him being in New York getting treated, that was his decision that he made, that the Spurs agreed to allow him to do that.
When you say teams don't allow you, what you mean is teams don't encourage that. Teams don't say leave here and go get a second opinion. He wanted to do that, so they let him do it.
Yeah, there's a reason why the guy is a team doctor.
Right.
Because he's been paid by the team. And typically, he's an expert in medicine and athletic medicine and injury, so they don't feel like if they did, they would have him on staff. So when you go outside of that umbrella, you're going outside of that. So collectively, did they make this decision together? No, they didn't. Now, being back with the Spurs, I believe that what Popovich said over a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when he said, hey, listen, this thing will expire. If he doesn't get back here at some point, he will put him on the deck, on the rack for the rest of the season. So I believe Kawhi hearing that and Kawhi getting better has him at practice and looking for his return to San Antonio. Does he want to stay there? For now, but I believe that he would say the right thing, because it wouldn't help him if he said I want out of San Antonio, because we saw LaMarcus Aldridge. He went to Pop this offseason, told him, I don't want to be here anymore. He said, good, no problem. You're going to be here.
Right. He said, go get me Anthony Davis or Kevin Durant. We'll talk about it. And then,
so which meant you're going to be here.
Right. Exactly right. So here, am I buying Kawhi's comments? I'm not. I also, though, I think you make a good point, Jenna. It'd be one thing if Kawhi was like, listen, everybody, I have a press conference. I want to say something. I want to be a Spur for life. Thanks, guys. That's different than being put in a position where if he answers that any way other than yes, sure, it is a huge controversy.
Absolutely.
And so it's not that I feel like he was being disingenuous. I think he was put in a tough spot. But I think the most important timeline of this is Kawhi's hurt. The Spurs clear him. He goes outside the team. We don't know what that doctor said. Kawhi still is not back. Greg Popovich has that press conference and sets a de facto deadline, and within 5 days, we hear Kawhi's coming back. Like that, it does not take Dick Tracy to figure out what happened there. Some great detective. We know what happened there. I feel I know what happened there. That the Spurs felt Kawhi was going to wait until the last possible moment to clear himself to where he was always planning to play in the postseason for this team. And Greg Popovich made it known that is not available to you. The idea that you're going to come back in game 81 and say, I'll be here for the playoffs, guys, that is not okay with us. So Kawhi came back, and it's just so odd, CeCe, for a player to be at crosswise with the Spurs medical staff. This is a team that punted on a chance to defend their first title with Tim Duncan. Why? Because they had him have a knee surgery he didn't want to have because they thought it was better for his long-term health of his career. Like, the Spurs are ultra-conservative on these things.
That don't mean they're always right. Just because they have a history and just because that worked out for him, that does. I know Kawhi his injuries are real.
No,
he's not that kind of player. He's not that kind of person. Now, is there certain things in San Antonio he's not happy with? Yes. He's not happy that they don't have the ability to be able to go out in free agency and potentially get one of these big-time players. Because with Aldridge there, what are they, the big two with Aldridge? So that's bothering him. His shoe deal with Jordan Brand, that's bothering him. The economics of that shoe deal, that's bothering him. So there are some real things outside of the injury that I believe play a role in this.
What do you think about his relationship with Pop at this point? Do you think just coming back has sort of repaired that? Because there's this thing dangling over him now, this max deal. I mean, in your honest opinion, do you think he'll be back here, sign that, and he moves on?
Well, I don't think him and Pop have a problem. I believe Kawhi was injured. And you can't play when you're injured. I believe they might have a difference of opinion, but you have to believe that. You have to know this. Pop is one of the great managers of personalities of not only basketball, U.S. basketball players, but international. He is able to have a locker room with, many different personalities, many different nationalities, and it goes smoothly. I believe this is just a bump in their relationship. I believe that Kawhi and the Spurs will work it out. They will not allow Kawhi to leave there.
Kawhi's making, CC mentioned the shoe deal, $500,000 a year. People will be shocked how low that is for an MVP candidate. $500,000 a year in his Jordan Brand shoe deal. He does not have a signature shoe. Yes, part of that is playing in San Antonio. Part of that also, though, for good or for bad, is part of being who Kawhi Leonard is.
His personality.
His personality. I'm not criticizing the personality.
Nope, that's who
but,
he is.
when you are that understated, when you are that low-key, when you don't draw attention to yourself, and you play in San Antonio, it's hard to get people to want to buy your sneakers. For kids to want to wear your sneakers, which therefore makes it hard for sneaker companies to say we want to give you $10, $12, $15 million a year.
Offseason continues to battle the NBA for real estate in our show. Seahawks in the news today. Seattle traded defensive end Michael Bennett to the Eagles for a 5th-round pick and for wide receiver Marcus Johnson. Bennett is 32 years old and said back in December, quote, "I probably won't be back next year. Just seems like a young man's game." Now reports are cornerback Richard Sherman is expected to be released. All right, so let's just take a step back here, CC. How do you think you'll remember this era in Seattle?
Tremendous era. Tremendous. Pete Carroll, his second chance at being a head coach in the NFL after great success at USC. Him and John Snyder, what they've done, they run a class organization. Not only their ability to win on the field, but he's done it with his style. When you come to Pete Carroll, it's like you don't have to change your personality. I'm going to make you the best version of you. Or whoever you are, I'm going to dig into you to find out who you are. It's about competition around this building. Every time they step through the door, they're competing at every level. Pete Carroll, the oldest coach in the NFL, still trying to tap into his ability to coach up young people, the vibe that they have in the organization, the way guys can speak their mind, their overall togetherness on the protest. This organization has been a championship organization, but it all boils down to 3 years ago in Super Bowl 49, their indecision not to run Marshawn Lynch for whatever excuse, for whatever reason that they decided to do that. Because when you have one Super Bowl and you have a chance to have two, and what that did, the next year what they do, they lost in the playoffs to Carolina. Carolina's in the playoff contention. Cam Newton gets MVP. So now all these other teams have come up, but their mark should be excellence. It's going to be, wow, how good could this have been? Because I believe if they win Super Bowl 49, they win back-to-back. I believe Marshawn Lynch gets at least another year. And I believe it's harder to break this team up. But what they did through these draft picks and free agents has been exceptional. Their ability to develop players have been exceptional. My hat off to Pete Carroll and John Snyder and what they do in Seattle.
Listen, I echo exactly what you said, that they deserve an enormous amount of credit. They picked Russell Wilson. And people, okay, so, yeah, they passed on him a couple times, then they picked him. They had just signed Matt Flynn to a huge contract.
Yes.
They picked Russell Wilson not in the first round, not in the second round,
nope.
In the third round. No one would have been like, oh, you're not starting. No one thought they were going to start Russell Wilson. They had given Matt Flynn all this money. They saw Russell Wilson was better and said, you know what? Money be damned, we're going to go with the better player. The way they developed Richard Sherman, the way they developed so many of these guys.
Doug Baldwin.
And taking chances on guys that other teams, Michael Bennett, we know he's a good player, but can he work with others?
No, he was not that good in Tampa.
Right, bring him here and we'll make it work. So they deserve an enormous amount of credit for that. But you are correct. One of the biggest what-ifs, sliding doors moments in NFL history is that goal line play, the Malcolm Butler interception, not scoring a touchdown. Not only for them, but what that meant for New England. We can talk about them on the front end. You mentioned if they win that Super Bowl, Marshawn gets another year. If they win that Super Bowl, Cam Chancellor likely gets the contract extension he wanted to start the following year. He doesn't get that. He holds out. They start 0-2. One of those games they lost because the backup safety gave up a bomb to Detroit, I believe it was. Well, guess what that leads to? You're on the road in round 2 against the 1 seed Carolina. There are a lot of things. If they win that Super Bowl, Russell Wilson has the greatest start to a career of any quarterback ever. 2 Super Bowls in the first 3 years. Pete Carroll, I think, punches his ticket to the Hall of Fame. You're not moving on from Richard Sherman. There are so many things for them. And for New England, let's not forget, if they lose that Super Bowl, it would have been over a decade since their last Super Bowl win, 3 Super Bowl losses in a row, and their recent playoff history would have been a 26-16 loss to Denver, a 28-13 loss to Baltimore, losing the Super Bowl to the Giants, a 28-21 loss to the Jets in the divisional round, a 33-14 beatdown to Baltimore. All that gets erased because of what happened there. So what that decision meant for the Seahawks era and for this latest iteration of the Patriots era, you cannot overstate it, CC.
So let's go back to what happened yesterday and what looks like it's going to happen with Richard Sherman. Why get rid of Michael Bennett now? They're getting a good deal on him price-wise. He's still producing for you. It's not like his production has declined over the years. Does it look like they're starting to break apart this team a little bit?
Well, no, they are breaking the team apart. It's not look like. They're getting ready to break the team apart. And we've seen, and we talk about it, with Pittsburgh yesterday, L. Bell, how much money they're going to have appropriated to the offense. Seattle's been this way with their defense. Besides Russell Wilson, just a sprinkled in Doug Baldwin, they gave him a new contract. Most of their money was on their defense. So we knew eventually they were going to have to, because not only because of age, but because these guys were in the second and third contracts that they wouldn't be able to make. Michael Bennett is still a very good player, but he's wanted the contract for a couple years. So he's in the last year of his contract. They're not going to give him a new contract. It's the perfect time to get off of Michael. Richard Sherman, he's got 2 Achilles injuries. He blew out his right Achilles, but then he's had problems with his left Achilles where he just had a procedure to have something done on his left Achilles. So as an older player, especially as a skilled guy, Achilles is not something that you want to be dealing with. So the combination of both these players, Cam Chancellor, he's got a bad neck. Cliff Averill, he's probably going to have to retire with a bad neck. So these are the normal things that you do when the teams get their second contract and they've had success. You have to downsize, and some of these older guys have to go.
CeCe, all of the moves that you laid out there make sense or potentially make sense to me, except for the Michael Bennett one. He's only scheduled to make $7 million. He's still their best defensive lineman. He is, he's not coming off a significant injury. They were thinking about trading Richard Sherman pre-blowing out the Achilles. He's going to make $11 million. He has very little money, very little guaranteed money left. I get that one. I don't understand trading Michael Bennett for a 5th-round pick to a team theoretically, because as long as you have Russell Wilson, you're still competing for championships, to a team theoretically you're competing with, but whomever they trade him to. This is the Michael Bennett move, unless it's about we're getting younger. Bennett's not necessarily a divisive locker room guy, but a outspoken guy.
There's certain guys you don't want to be negotiating with, especially publicly, and I believe Michael Bennett is one of those players. He's been outspoken about everything, and I believe that his contract, at some point, the locker room and the leadership of the locker room, when you have younger guys, you have to be careful how many older guys you're going to keep in, because these veteran players, they're leading guys. Now, are they leading them to what the organization is saying? Or are they leading them to their own agenda? And typically when you get late in your career, like Michael is right now, I think he's 33 right now, that is an old defensive tackle.
Back here on First Things First, Eric Mangini is with us. Morning, Coach.
What up, Coach? Good to see you. Good morning.
The best guest we've had this year consistently
Yes.
Best as far as our guests and
I
everything
second that.
consistently.
I just want to thank you for allowing me to sit next to greatness.
Well, I had to get between the
greatness
best.
on
I had to get you.
'Cause I feel like my ship
Coach
is
was like,
now
this show's not
ready.
humble enough for me. I got to go. I'm in the wrong studio.
I'm with the smartest, greatest
What are you the best at,
in the
Coach?
history of the world. No one's better.
If you sit down here, you got to tell us what you're the best at.
Oh, God.
Idea. How much time do you have?
I'm
You
gonna
wanna
bring
extend it?
I'm gonna bring your boys in here.
Yeah, let's have a
Very-
special.
Yeah.
We need a whole special on how
Yeah,
great I
nothing.
am.
His boys think nothing.
Very, very good.
Certainly not Fortnite.
All right, so earlier in the show, we told you about the Seahawks trade that took place yesterday. Seattle sending defensive end Michael Bennett to the Eagles in exchange for a 5th-round pick. The rich have gotten richer in Philadelphia. An already productive defensive line adds a player who was a Pro Bowler the last 3 seasons and had 54 sacks the last 5 in Seattle. But he's 32 years old, said the woman in her early 40s. Coach, how much better does Bennett make the Eagles as we gloss over ages?
Well, what I like about this move is the fact that the Eagles aren't sitting still. And we give New England a lot of credit in the offseason, making moves and whether it's adding pieces or proactively moving on from pieces. I like that part of what the Eagles are doing. In terms of how much better it makes them, it just depends on what other moves they're going to have to make in order to create salary cap space. They're over the cap right now. And do they move on from Vin Curry? If they could keep Vin Curry, I think that, then the rich get richer. But if they have to move on from him, I know Vin Curry only had 3 sacks, but he did lead the team in hurries. So I love it. I love the fact that they were aggressive with it. But what other pieces now have to be moved in order to make him fit?
So, and if you guys saw, the NFL Network reported yesterday that the Patriots at the last minute tried to get in on this deal and tried to offer a better deal than Philadelphia had to get Michael Bennett. And what does that tell you? It tells me that Seattle moving on from Michael Bennett is not necessarily a clear indicator that Michael Bennett's washed, that Michael Bennett's done. It's that what CC alluded to earlier, that because they are getting younger and because Michael Bennett is not only a veteran, not only an established veteran, a Super Bowl champion, but let's call it a dominant personality, that he's not going to fit in every locker room. And so that when I saw this move, that was the part from Seattle's standpoint. I was like, man, he's only making $7 million. You do have the cap space. He's still a good player. And then the point you make is a good one. But if you're getting younger, what can he do? Philadelphia should have no problem with that. Philadelphia has veteran defensive locker room. They just won a Super Bowl. They have great leadership in place. For them, they can deal with a dynamic personality as well as any locker room in the NFL, correct?
Michael Bennett's one of my favorite players in the league. And not only because he's outspoken in the league, but the way he plays the game. People might make fun of him when you see pictures of him. He has the smallest shoulder pads humanly possible. He's got the little league, 8-year-old to 10-year-old shoulder pads on. I mean, he is a man playing this game. He loves to play football. So even at this stage of his career, at 32, Jenna, he loves the game. And I believe it's a great fit for him. And he was fortunate that he's going to Philadelphia compared to going to New England, because it's a lot more fun in Philadelphia and being able to do what you want to do, express yourself, and play within their system with Jim Schwartz, than going to New England, where your brother last year, he basically quit on him at the end of the season. So that right there, I believe he brings a good energy to the locker room. He's more versatile than Vinny Curry. The salary cap numbers, he's a little bit less than Curry. They also have one of their backup defensive linemen who's a free agent, so potentially they're going to lose him. I think this is a great fit. I believe he brings great energy, and you're giving up a low-round draft pick for a rental for a guy for 1 year who has a championship pedigree.
And also, go ahead, Coach.
Well, it's a good fit, too, because of his age, and he has fought through some injuries. And in Philadelphia, their approach where they platoon those guys and they've got a volume of different players that they can put in, this gives a guy who's a little bit further along in his career a chance to come in, be fresh. They don't have to rely on him being an every single down player, and it's not what they do. I think the New England report, the only thing I question on that is it's hard for me to believe that Seattle wouldn't go with the better deal. I understand, what you're saying.
Well, listen, and in fairness, for the reporter who reported on NFL Network has known to miss a few, so maybe it's an erroneous. I'm just telling you what was reported.
No. Yes.
And so, I'm obviously not the one doing it. The thing that I like so much about this for Philly is what you alluded to in the beginning. Man, It is hard to win championships in this league. And as we see with Seattle, you can think that window is going to be open, and all of a sudden it's a lot shorter than you think. Not that Seattle's championship window is closed, but that iteration of the team they're on now to a new type of team, or at least new personnel. Philadelphia looked at it and said, what were we great at last year? Offensive and defensive line. Okay, we're probably, even if they had not traded for Michael Bennett, they were probably going to lose Vinny Curry. They were probably going to move on from him. How can we make sure we're still great? Offensive, defensive line. Let's bring in one of the best specialists in the league at this age. I think it's fair to say I know he plays inside and outside, good against the run as well, but he can be a pass rush specialist. Like, that is a team not resting on their laurels. A team that says, we know we don't have a salary cap space, we're going to have to make some other moves, but we can get a good player for a 5th-round pick. That 5th-round pick's not helping us this year. Let's go get him.
And let's realize the Jim Schwartz combination, because last year, like no team, they had 7 defensive linemen play 400 snaps. In the biggest play in the Super Bowl, people will say it's the Philly special and everything. No, it wasn't. It was the Brandon Graham sack. Where was Brandon Graham? He's a defensive end that was playing defensive tackle. So the ability to be able to rotate these players, because Michael Bennett can do the same thing. He can play outside 7-9 technique, or he can play inside and play a 3 or 5 technique. It gives Brandon Graham the flexibility now. He can play inside or outside. So, man, you put him with Jim Schwartz, let me tell you who's not happy. Dallas, the Giants, and the Redskins. And even we heard about New England. I guarantee you New England is not happy that one of the best teams in the league got better by getting a quality player who's also a fit in their scheme.
And what you really hope, too, is that after winning the Super Bowl, it's difficult. And I've said this a lot. You got to learn how to deal with success and all the issues that come from being the team that was hunting to now being the team that's hunted. And he gives some perspective to that locker room of what it takes to maintain success.
He tried to repeat.
Having gone through the process and hopefully that will translate in the locker room and people will be able to learn from his experience as well.
But I think what you said earlier resonates a lot. This team just won, and they won well, and they didn't have to start making moves so quickly, but they're going to go out there and try to shore up every single different position that they know they're going to need to make sure is in place.
Yeah, it sends a great message, because when you're in the offseason, they're a little more than 30 days from winning. You know, they're going on all these tours. They're going to vacation. They're playing in golf tournaments. Everybody's inviting them. They're doing personal appearances. But it's nice to see that the organization has stabilized. They've gone to the combine, and they're trying to make this team better. Let me know the last bad deal Howie Roseman did.
Yeah.
And this just goes to his credits. Wow, this guy right here, man, he's made another deal. Jay Ajayi during the season. Oh, we can get him. So for me, it's a young organization with management, the coaching staff working together that's trying to get better and is at the top of the mountain.
And one name that we have not mentioned is Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox is arguably, after Aaron Donald, the best interior lineman in football. Fletcher Cox demands a double team repeatedly throughout the game. So what that means for a guy like Michael Bennett, who was getting double teamed a lot in Seattle, if you do put him on the edge, he's likely getting single teamed or just a tight end chipping him. If you have Brandon Graham and Michael Bennett on the field with Fletcher Cox in there and Timmy Jernigan next to him, you can only double team one of those guys, maybe 2 if you want to do max protection. 2 really good D linemen are going to repeatedly be getting single blocked, which was the recipe to Philly's success last year.
All right, Coach, don't go anywhere unless you want to say something, and then I'll wait for 10 seconds for you to say something.
I just got to bask in my greatness and the greatness of,
all right, so you didn't have
my
anything
associate.
To say. We get it, Nick Smart.
I was leaving on a high note.
Hey everybody, Nick Wright here, and thank you so much for listening to the First Things First podcast. But I wanted to tell you about another podcast at Fox Sports that we are so excited about, and that is Alexi Lalas's State of the Union podcast. That's right, U.S. soccer legend Alexi Lalas will be partnering up with Fox soccer guru and researcher extraordinaire David Moss to review the top storylines in soccer across the globe. Each week, Alexi will give his State of the Union on American soccer as it rebuilds for the future. Subscribe and listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts right now. Now back to the show.
Back here on First Things First, Eric Mangini's still with us. It's always good in life to have a backup plan. Plan A for the Broncos. What was Kirk Cousins? That doesn't seem that likely at this point. Plan B, Case Keenum or Josh McCown, as was reported yesterday. We are all still waiting on a plan C, especially if that would be B. Coach, what should the Broncos do at quarterback?
Well, they're going to have to attack this a lot of different ways, and that's what John Elway has done. Whether it was going to get Peyton Manning when everybody thought that or weren't sure whether or not he could play, he aggressively went and signed him and paid him a lot of money to do that, and it worked out. Now, since then, there's been a lot of problems. You figure they took Paxton Lynch, #1, in 2016. They've got Trevor Siemian. He was a 7th-round draft pick. Got Chad Kelly, right? He's another 7th-round draft pick. Yeah. They brought back Brock Osweiler. They had wanted to sign Brock Osweiler. They had Mark Sanchez. So they've tried to get an answer to this question, and I do appreciate him aggressively trying to find that answer. To me, whether it's the players listed, we said Case Keenum and potentially
Josh
McCown, that could work. That could work. I would imagine looking in the draft would probably be the best place. Maybe try to solve it again in the draft and hope that they're a lot more
Well, they have the 5.
there.
Did they pick a quarterback? They're going to have to at this point.
There should be a quarterback that fits for him at that spot. So,
but they could pick a quarterback and
answer.
still want to sign a veteran guy. But go ahead, CC.
Well, this is what I do know. Outside of him and his wife having a baby, there is no plan with Josh McCown. Like if you take him, and I hope him and his wife have healthy kids. But you tell me where that they've had a plan. High school, college. You tell me in the last 15 years, Josh McCown is my plan. That means you don't have a plan. All right? So for me, that is a no-go. And also, let's just be realistic. Who is Denver right now? Their defense? That's not no championship defense.
Getting older.
22nd in the NFL this year in points allowed. Now, they are more than a quarterback away. And if you're going to the bottom heap of the starting quarterbacks, like this is the bottom of the barrel. Case Keenum, let's go to him. I'm concerned about Case. Does Case go back to St. Louis, L.A. days, Rams days, because of the lack of offensive line and the lack of a dependable running game? Case will be running for his life. Won't be the Case you were cheering for and pulling. Oh, Case, let's go, Case.
It wasn't in that high register, but it was close.
But he could go back to the Case that we know. So this Denver defense is not a championship defense, and I don't believe that they're good enough at this point that they can support one of these quarterbacks who would potentially, at their best, be around 22 to 32 as far as the best starters in the NFL.
I just want to remind the audience something. Like, this is what Denver gets. Because Denver last year had the opportunity to get a quarterback they liked, a quarterback they thought fit, a quarterback they had tried to acquire a year before, in Colin Kaepernick, and decided against it for whatever reasons. And instead, they trotted out Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch and 7th-round pick Trevor Siemian. And by the way, Simeon's a good story for a 7th-round pick. He's been better than most 7th-round picks, but just a bad story for your starting quarterback. And when you do that, when you try to trade for Cap before you know his politics, and then when you can have him for free a year later after he had a fine season the year before, was finally healthy, you decide, no, we're gonna bring back Brock Osweiler instead. We're gonna see if Mark Sanchez can work instead. Well, then guess what? Sometimes you end up without a chair in the game. Sometimes you end up without a quarterback, and sometimes you deserve to end up without a quarterback.
But even if they had signed Cap, we could still be sitting here saying the same thing, especially based on no offensive line, based on the way the wide receivers have not played. Right? They have not played like the type of money. Sanders has been the best one. Thomas is not. He is not nearly as good. No running game. So we could still be sitting here with, man, they missed again. They need a quarterback. Irregardless of who they decided or the mistakes they made, they need a top-flight quarterback, and I don't believe that they answer that or solve that by the names that we have on the list, Coach.
It's funny. They got a lot of credit for not signing Brock Osweiler, but they tried to sign Brock Osweiler.
They would have if they could.
They really wanted him to be there. Brock Osweiler was angry about the way he was treated. He got a really good deal. He decided to leave. But it wasn't the fact that they said, he's not our guy, we're going to move on.
The Broncos
they just got outbid.
Offered him 4 years, $64 million with $32 million guaranteed, $30 or $32 million guaranteed. The Texans came in over the top, because of course they did, and offered him 4 years, $72 million with $38 million guaranteed. It's not like they watched Brock Osweiler.
They signed him without even visiting him.
Without even visiting him or talking to him. But it's not like they saw Brock Osweiler and said, you know what? We're walking away from this. That is a forgotten moment of history. It was, you do not get credit for the fact that you did your best to sign Brock Osweiler and just didn't sign him, and then, by the way, brought him back at some point.
And I think if you go get a veteran quarterback as a placeholder, it's typically with the thought in mind that you're also going to go get a young quarterback. So maybe they keep Paxton Lynch and go draft another quarterback high. He's drafted, 3 different quarterbacks now. Maybe it might even be a little bit higher.
He's drafted 5 quarterbacks if we include the 7th round.
Right, well, we'll draft. Okay, so he's tried to solve this problem. I could see them trying to solve it again in the draft and bring in a veteran guy as a placeholder. But there's also a lot of questions of coaching. In coaching, they fired the offensive coordinator in the first year, so we've got a new offensive coordinator. We don't know exactly what the scheme is going to be either.
The quarterback pool is really slim this year.
You
have Kirk Cousins, you have Case Keenum, maybe Josh McCown.
You have Teddy Bridgewater, who I think is actually a somewhat intriguing option.
But his name hasn't come up at all in Denver.
Yes.
The thing that, just quickly here, if they like Baker Mayfield, I would imagine, and I think he'd be there at 5, I would imagine they would sign a veteran quarterback in addition to that. I don't think they're going to draft Baker and just say you're starting from week 1. So I would think that would be the scenario you're shaking.
I'm totally cool with that. I'm just not Josh McCown. Unless him and his wife are having a baby. I'm just not, that's just not a plan.
I love it.
He's really into them extending their family.
I'm sure they probably got kids. They plan for that.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long.